Greetings, everybody, from still sunny California, from Blacklisted News. Today, February 27th, 2017. Source: Charles Hugh Smith. Virtue signaling doesn't signal virtue. It signals decline and collapse. There are many reasons why Imperial Rome declined. The two primary causes that get relatively little attention are moral decay and soaring wealth inequality. The two are, of course, intimately connected. Once the morals of the ruling elites degrade, the status quo seeks to mask its self-serving, wrought-behind, high-minded, virtue-signaling appeals to past glories and cost-free idealism. Virtue signaling is defined as the conspicuous expression of moral values by an individual done primarily with the intent of enhancing that person's standing within a social group. The practice of publicly expressing opinions or sentiments intended to demonstrate one's good character or the moral correctness of one's position on a particular issue, and saying you love or hate something to show off what a virtuous person you are, instead of actually trying to fix the problem. Yes, yes, yes. Virtue signaling expresses two other key characteristics of an empire in terminal decline: complacency and intellectual sclerosis. I wonder what that is, if that's a real thing. Well, I was trying to ask the computer what that means, but anyways, Michael Grant described these manifestations of decline in his excellent account, The Fall of the Roman Empire, a short book I've been recommending since 2009. There was no room at all in these ways of thinking for the novel, apocalyptic situation which had now arisen, a situation which needed solutions as radical as itself. The status quo attitude is a complacent acceptance of things as they are without a single new idea. The acceptance was accompanied by greatly excessive optimism about the present and future. But what ended was even when the end was only 60 years away, and the empire was already crumbling fast, Rutilius continued to address the spirit of Rome with the same supreme assurance. A blind adherence to the ideas of the past ranks high among the principal causes of the downfall of Rome. If you were sufficiently lulled by these traditional fictions, there was no call to take any practical first aid measures at all. What are those resisting Trump proposing as solutions to the profound structural ills afflicting the empire? Question mark. Gender-neutral bathrooms? Question mark. A continuation of a dysfunctional immigration policy? Question mark. Blaming Russia to mask the catastrophic failure of the past 25 years of neocon imperial overreach? Question mark. Cost-free virtue signaling? Proclamations in support of diversity? Question mark. Safe places on college campuses, paid for by student loans, crushing a vast indentured class of debt serfs? Question mark. Yeah, what are they doing? What are those anti-Trump groups proposing as a solution to their problem, aside from just creating havoc and receiving paychecks from Soros, that's all. Okay. These status quo policies and cost-free diversions are the acme of a profound complacency and intellectual sclerosis that serve to defend a self-serving, morally corrupt, political and financial elite. Virtue signaling pronouncements lack any recognition of the moral, political, social, and financial crisis facing the American empire, and are devoid of any practical, politically/financially painful first aid measures to staunch the decline. Glenn Stale, commenting on 9/16/15 on a thread in the excellent website peakoilbarrel.com, made a number of excellent points that I am taking the liberty of excerpting, with thanks to correspondent Paul S. The set values developed by the early Romans, called mos maiorum, Peter Turchin explains in War and Peace and War, The Rise and Fall of Empires, was gradually replaced by one of personal greed and pursuit of self-interests. Probably the most important value was virtue, which derived from the word vir, man, and embodied all the qualities of a true man as a member of society, explains Turchin. Virtus included the ability to distinguish between good and evil, and act in the ways that promoted good, and especially the common good. Unlike Greeks, Romans did not stress individual prowess, as exhibited by Homeric heroes or Olympic champions. The ideal of hero was one whose courage, wisdom, and self-sacrifice saved his country in time of peril, Turchin adds. And as Turchin goes on to explain, unlike the selfish elites of the later periods, the aristocracy of the early republic did not spare its blood or treasure in the service of the common interest. When 50,000 Romans, a staggering 1/5 of Rome's total manpower, perished in the Battle of Cannae, as mentioned previously. Now, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing these right, but you get the point. The Senate lost almost 1/3 of its membership. This suggests that the senatorial aristocracy was more likely to be killed in wars than the average citizen. The wealthy classes were also the first to volunteer extra taxes when they were needed. A graduated scale was used, in which senators paid the most, followed by the knights, and then other citizens. In addition, officers and centurions, but not common soldiers, served without pay, saving the state 20% of the legion's payroll. The richest 1% of the Romans during the early republic was only 10 to 20 times as wealthy as an average Roman citizen. Now, compare that to the situation in late antiquity, when an average Roman noble of senatorial class had properly valued in the neighborhood of 20,000 Roman pounds of gold. There was no middle class comparable to the small landholders of the 3rd century BC. The huge majority of the population was made up of landless peasants working land that belonged to nobles. Sounds like slavery. These peasants had hardly any property at all. But if we estimate it very generously at 1/10 of a pound of gold, the wealth differential would be 200,000. Inequality grew both as a result of the rich getting richer. Late imperial senators were 100 times wealthier than their republican predecessors, and those of the middle middling wealth becoming poor. Do you see any similarities with the present-day realities depicted in these charts? Right down here. Okay. I'll scroll down. Okay. A self-serving class of technocrats and bureaucratic nomenclatura, and I'm going to go ahead. See, there we go. Hang on. Well, I was trying to pull up what this word means, but because I can't highlight. Oh, there we go. Hold on. Okay, I finally got it highlighted. So I'm going to ask Cortana what that means. And hold on. Okay, so nomenclature, whatever. In the former Soviet Union, a list of influential posts in the government and industry to be filled by Communist Party appointees. So that's what that word means. Have garnered all the gains, while the bottom 90% have lost ground in wages, wealth, and financial security. This technocrat nomenclatura class controls both private and public powers, media, finance, trade, industry, governance, and institutions, which serves its own interests. Now here's the chart. Okay, I'm not really good with graphics and charts, so if you want to pause the video here and check all this out, you might want to do that. And there's more graphs down here. So what we have now is a self-serving virtue signaling technocrat class that works for a self-serving political/financial elite that avoids the imperial burdens of military service and taxes while imposing what amounts to an economic military conscription on the working class. This imperial elite sends these military conscripts around the globe to defend their imperial interests. Virtue signaling doesn't signal virtue. It signals decline and collapse. Just as in the 5th century Rome, an empire careening towards collapse, those reaping the gains are complacently confident in their moral superiority, while their hubris-soaked intellectual sclerosis blinds them to the systemic banquet of consequences that will soon choke their precious self-serving status. Whoa. That was a pretty good article. And that is it. I'm done. I'm out. Have a wonderful day. Love y'all. Until next time. Take care. Be safe.